Well, hey everyone, it is Ellen Teresa again coming to you live with Jared Larson, a very, very good friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time, haven't we, Jared?
Yes, we have, Ellen. Yes,
And we've worked overseas for a long time, and we've worked in different areas around social justice and spent time in Asia together, spent time in the UK together. Yeah, we just come with a long history.
Yep. It's been good. Been
Yeah,
very
and it's
good.
so good to see you. And I would like you just to
Thank
share
you.
a little bit about your life. I know you have an extraordinary one, and I know that you've seen and done a variety of things. You've been involved in a lot of things, but there's always a backstory to all the things where you are right now. So if you
Yep.
could just share a little bit about your history, where you're from, and how it all began.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellen. So let's see where to begin. I was adopted from India, raised by a single mother in a very small conservative town, probably more cows and chickens than people, actually,
Right.
and very strong Scandinavian town. So I grew up eating a lot of lefse and lutefisk, but it was also predominantly a Catholic. So, for a majority of my time, I was in the Lutheran church until sixth grade. Then we went to a Congregationalist church out in the middle in the country, and very small group of people, but wonderful people, very nice people. A lot of the teachers went there, actually. So that's where I started to take my faith more seriously, I guess you could say. And that's where I went to a Billy Graham crusade with them and found Jesus, and life was never the same. I actually started listening to the sermons. I actually started paying attention and trying to understand what they were talking about. Started to engage in Sunday school, youth group, all the normal things that you do as a typical Christian American youth, and going to the concerts, going to the revivals, going to
Yes.
you know everything. And so yeah, was great, was fun. And I thought, growing up as a your typical small town Christian, I knew everything, right? My
Of
view was
course, of
right,
course. Yes.
and your view, Ellen, was wrong, and anybody else's view was wrong. And hey, if you didn't agree with my narrow-minded view, you obviously were a heretic, and so there was something wrong. So I had to convert you. So I spent a lot of time in my early years talking to people who were in my eyes non-believers, you could say.
Yep.
Talking to a lot of Catholics, telling them they were going to hell, giving them literature and books which never went over very well.
Yes.
um, there were even a group of very nice young ladies in school. They called themselves witches, and they dressed in black goth all the time. They had what was called the Bible for witchcraft, and they met, and we would go to battle, and I would bring up my stuff with the Bible. They would bring up their stuff from their literature. And I talked about, hey, one day the rapture is going to happen and you're going to be stuck here, and then you need to know that, oh well, you chose the wrong side. And so we had a lot of arguments and debates in school. I i always thought, okay, I'm going to win because I'm right.
Yes.
I can't be wrong. So this continued on even when I joined the military. I would spend a lot of time talking about my faith with different people because I had to I had to save these guys. I had to make it my mission. And so spend a lot of time evangelizing, talking about how they shouldn't be drinking, shouldn't be uh, viewing pornography, shouldn't be doing all these different things that they've been doing, and they need to be going to church. They need to be uh, praying, reading their Bible, and believing what I believe.
Sure.
And so yeah, I even started going to Bible college after high school. And that's where it started to shift a little bit for me.
Okay, so
So
let me back up a little bit here. So I'm trying to get a little picture here and a picture for the audience. How on earth did you become so like really just hammering with your faith like that? Because I've met your mother, and I've met different people that you're around, and not all of them come off with that same sort of tone. So where did you
yeah,
come up with that? Like, how did you end up getting that?
great question. So do you remember, in maybe, I don't know if it was in your church, but many churches, they had this spiritual gift survey as youth that we would take.
Oh, yes.
And they had certain there were like a list of them that, okay, you could score high on. Well, mine was, do you like talking about God? Do you like talking about Jesus? Well, yes. So I ended up with the evangelism
Of course.
One. And so that was like number one on my list. Everything else was way below. So it's like, well, yeah, I obviously like talking about God. So I talk about God with people in church, right? Therefore, I'm an evangelist. I gave myself that title, if you will, as
Yep.
the evangelist. I had to evangelize everybody. I had to make them think and believe like I did. And so,
And would you say that your identity was totally engrossed and formed within
oh,
that view of being an evangelist?
oh, absolutely. Completely. I had to tell absolutely everyone. It was my mission, my goal. If I wasn't talking to people about Jesus all the time, then there was something wrong with me. I was even praying before I would go to my weekend drills for the military, and praying, Lord, give me evangelism opportunities. Open up the door for me to talk more about my faith. And so, yep. And sometimes doors would swing open, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes I was just there to encourage people. So
Yeah.
it wasn't always evangelism, but if I had that opportunity, I would definitely be pounding and hammering away with the Bible and with Jesus. And
So what
so,
did this do for your relationships? I'm kind of curious about this. Like, how were relationships with you if you're always evangelizing people, or relationships become an agenda of sorts? What did that look like?
you're right. That's a good question. So many of my relationships, unfortunately, did become an agenda. And some of my friendships I even lost. Like, I had good friendships with some of those wonderful young ladies because I grew up with them who called themselves witches
Mhm,
and who dressed in black because, we grew up together. It's a small town.
mhm.
Um, and I lost some of them as friends, and I regret that. They just they weren't willing to have me continually belittle them,
Mhm, mhm,
berate their beliefs,
mhm.
and try and basically condemn them. I
Sure.
was condemning them, and realize, looking back, it's like, wow, I could still have great friendships with these
Yeah.
people. I even lost a prom date because I asked her out and she was Catholic, and she said, well, you hate Catholics because you're handing out, these books and these literature. I'm like, well, I don't really hate them. I just believe you're going to hell. So I'm
Oh
like,
no.
look,
Oh
looking,
gosh.
looking, looking back, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, I really did a lot of self damage to
Oh,
friendships
yep.
that I should not have, and I regret that. I
Mhm.
really do. It's like I could have, even in my views, I could have done it a whole different way, right? Be it the way I communicated, the way I interacted with them. I didn't have to hand out literature. I didn't have to hand out books. I could have, you know, been much more gentle in spirit with them,
Yeah.
taken a humbler approach and a loving approach. I think that's one of the things that myself, and speaking on behalf of many other Christians, we don't
Mhm.
take that loving approach. We think that by taking the hammer down or holding up that picket sign, that sign that says you're going to hell for, abortion, you're going to hell for LGBTQ, for whatever, it's like, wow, I was really not giving a good representation of God. I was not giving a good representation of, the 2 billion other people who claim to have the same faith I do.
Yeah.
We're representatives of other people in our own belief system, right? So looking back, I did a lot of damage and lost friendships, and really regret that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so then you went from that small town, you continued though with your faith, you expanded it
Yep.
even more, and you ended up going to Bible college. Can you talk a little bit
Yes,
about Bible college?
absolutely. So it was in Bible college that I met a professor who was an English teacher and was a Quaker pacifist. So
What a combination. What
yes,
a
yes.
combination. Wow.
Now, here's the interesting part of this, Ellen. My first week in Bible college was when 9/11 happened. And it was his class that he came in and announced that, hey, we're canceling class. There's just been a terrorist attack in Washington, D.C. And, I had just finished basic training, AIT, had already been in the military for a year. And so my heart sank and I was just upset, angry. And yet he's the one announcing this and saying, we should not be using racial terms against Arabs, against Muslims. We really need to show love, the love of Christ. And I was getting angry, but yet he was the one that I kept going back to and asking questions. Ironically,
Hmm.
The person who was rubbing me the wrong way was the
Sure.
one who I'm like, okay, I don't like you at times. I don't like what you're saying, but yet I'm learning from you. You're
Hmm.
teaching me a different perspective that I didn't have from the church. And so kept going to him. And slowly my views began to change. I realized, maybe this fusion of nationalism and faith that I grew up within the church is wrong. Maybe America isn't always right and God ordained, and everything that we do is God ordained, be it war or our politics or our views here in this country.
Well, that's a
And so
huge leap. That's a massive leap. Because I remember, I remember you telling me at one point you wanted to run for president. And you wanted, all of the United States to, become Christian and be Bible believers. But that's a gigantic leap to go from something so ingrained to something else. So what was he sharing? What was he specifically honing in on that caused you to change your beliefs?
he was really hammering away at the love of Jesus. He was really signifying this, that, you know what, look at the life of Christ. Even though Christ was not weak, he wasn't a wimp. He did take a stand on things, but he was not violent. He didn't call down thunder and lightning like some of the disciples wanted and strike his enemies. He
Yes.
didn't, ride in on a horse with a sword and kill people. He actually did the opposite. He died for people. He loved people unconditionally, no matter what. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. But, and I'm like, well, what about our country? What about us? What about our rights, our values? And it was like, the more he kept showing the love of Christ and showing me the gospel of Christ in that light, it was like, okay, self-sacrifice is the way. Living for others is the way. And I guess you could even relate it almost to Buddhism, where it's like letting go of the things of this earth and you have that peace.
Mm.
The more you let go of the things of this earth, my patriotism, my love for the country, that view of, well, my country's right, Ellen, no matter what, and my faith is right, no matter what, you become more free. But then that freedom was seeing Jesus from a whole different view, a whole different perspective, a perspective of, well, maybe you and I don't have the same beliefs, Ellen, but I can still show you the love of Christ as a friend. I can still show
Absolutely.
you God's love. And I don't have to berate and belittle you, even though we may be from two different worldviews. Worldviews can be different. People can be different, but we can still love them. And at the end of the day, people will live their life how they want. That's the true love of God, and that's the true freedom that God gives us, right? We all have freedom to do whatever we really want in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was, I guess you could call this evolutionary process
Oh, yeah.
of realizing, okay, I've really got to shave down bit by bit all these different things that I once believed. He became one of my favorite professors. Even though I had him only for like 2 or 3 English classes, I actually, my last year, right before I was deployed, took a class on pacifism with him and did a lot of research and studying on the scriptures and on like people like George Fox, who, very much preached and taught pacifism and understanding, wow, this really makes sense. This really is the way of Christ. And there's so many others who have modeled themselves after that, like Miroslav Volf, who even after the effects in Kosovo and the genocide still said pacifism is the way, for something greater, something bigger, to transform this world and the hearts and minds of people. I was like, okay, there's something more to this. Even though I'm willing to lay down my life for other people, do I want to have the government or others above me saying, okay, Ellen is now your enemy, you have to go fight and kill her? No, I don't. Regardless of what the government says, I believe that we as believers can still take a stand against what is wrong and unjust, social justice issues, trafficking, all these different things that are wrong, that do harm to other people. But yet we don't have to say, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to do harm to you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question.
Mhm.
What is pacifism in your view? What does that mean? Because I know people are going to be hearing this and they're going to be
Yeah.
like, well, that's just apathy. Okay, you're just apathetic. Okay, this whole pacifist thing, nobody standing up for things, like, and all that. And I know you're
Mhm.
giving examples of where pacifism is not a lack of standing up against something, it is acknowledging something. But in your view, in your definition of it, how it works and plays in your life, and I don't know whether you
Mhm.
would consider yourself a pacifist or not, but what is the define, like, well, how do you define this word for you?
Great question. So pacifism, from what I've come to understand it, for my view, is activism, where you are still actively engaging. You're not just going about your life and like, oh, whatever happens, happens in this world. It's like, no, you are working to make a difference, working to change lives. If you or someone you care about or other people are being attacked or hurt, yes, you take a stand against it, but you don't have to take a life for it.
So you don't have to, like, a life for a life, a force for a force, kind of. You don't have to use it with force.
Exactly. I've met pacifists who will still take a stand and are willing to get into a fight or a skirmish over it, but they're not willing to take a life.
Right, right.
And that's where I very much probably would be. I don't know if I would label myself a full pacifist. I definitely believe in nonviolence. I believe we should be able, as rational human beings, to articulate ourselves and have a discussion of, okay, what is this beef between us? What is this conflict?
Sure.
And try and work it out. And if we can't, well then, hey, let's try and go our ways. Now, if we need to get the authorities involved, if we need to get, the justice system involved, so be it. Could I be wrong in that? I absolutely could be. Remember, I'm still evolving. I'm still growing. I haven't fully figured it all out. But yet that makes so much more sense than just saying, okay, let's immediately reach up for the sword and let's immediately fight. Because evil begets evil, hate begets hate. All we're going to do is just cause more bloodshed and more conflict. And we've got enough of that going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
Something has to be different, you know.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
Yes.
I mean, and when you look at what some pacifists have done, regardless of their religious denomination, for those of your viewers who have seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge or haven't seen it, I strongly recommend it. But a Seventh-day Adventist who refused to take up a weapon yet still wanted to serve in a loving manner, went as a medic, saved the lives of countless people in World War II. I mean, what if we have more people like that? Think of how different the world would be if
Yes.
you had so many
Yes.
more people rising up and doing that, saying, okay, I'm laying my life down for all these other people who hate me, who mistreated me during training, who don't want me around them, but I'm still willing to love them unconditionally. I'm still willing to go into combat with them, get shot at, and I'm going to save as many of them as I can because I love them, because they're human beings. They have human value, human dignity, regardless of our ethnic background, racial background, religious background, even. I mean, he didn't
You sound
differentiate
very
between.
much, it sounds very much like an empowering message versus not having power. I think sometimes, I mean, well, maybe you can answer this question, because I know we could go a bazillion directions here in this conversation, but
Mhm.
why don't we take that stand first? Why is there a rah rah and there's the gun coming out and there's these things happening, especially in America as we see it, but it's happening
Right.
all over the world too. It's not just, in America, but we are, we're talking a lot about
Mhm.
America here, but why don't we take that stance? What's the deal?
That is a very good question. And I think a lot of it stems from history where we've just gotten used to our own rights, our own liberties. Nations have, for the longest time, been fusing nationalism and faith, been saying, okay, we're not going to persecute you. We want Christians to be a part of our nation. We want all religious beliefs, to be a part of this nation. Like, since we're sticking with America, we have freedom of religion. You can believe what you believe. I believe what I believe. But we do what is good for the state. The state is now ultimately God, and your religious views are the subservient God. And so therefore you will bow before Caesar and you will serve the greater master. Um, why why do we do that? Why don't we live self-sacrificially? I think because we love our rights, we love our liberties. We don't like to suffer. And I think here in America, we've had it good for so long. I think the last time we've really had hardship and difficulty, like deep hardship, was probably the Great Depression and World War II time frame. Since that time, historically, Americans have been climbing up and up. It hasn't always been easy. There's been difficulties and challenges, but yet we've had it very good. Well, do you really think the church wants to give up the goodness that they have? The nice churches they have, the nice pews they have, the financial benefits they have, the nice homes and vehicles that many have? Not all of them, but for a majority, we are actually very, very wealthy and have so many rights and benefits in this nation.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
we do.
so,
We
so yeah,
do. I mean, there's things I experienced in the UK that would not even be acceptable in the US because there would be some sort of uprising and some sort of something happening, to create a skirmish of sorts so that
right,
things would come back to these are my rights, these are my rights, these are my rights. And there's a lot of I and me, but not a lot of we is what I'm hearing from you. Now, from what you have said to me in the past, is it wasn't just the Quaker pacifist that morphed your beliefs and shaped them and has helped you to basically find humility.
right, yes.
Right, there was something else that happened to you. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So also at this same time, I met a Palestinian man um, who was at the same Bible college. And at the same time, I had my belief about Israel because of the Christian church upbringing. And he had his beliefs and we bumped heads. But I learned so much from him. And he became one of my closest friends there. I kept coming back and asking for more information and wanting to know more about Palestine, about the chosen people, about how, about this whole conflict that's going on. And the more he kept showing me videos of what's really going on in the Middle East, the more he kept talking to me and taking me even through the scriptures and talking about, how we as the church are now, grafted in with God, with Israel, and we are to all go out and be light to the nations.
Mm.
Um, it hit me more and more. That's like, wow, we really should not have such a close relationship to Israel, and my views of Israel are very different. Basically, now my argument with the church is that, hey, the Jews were supposed to find Christ when he came 2,000 years ago, and they were all supposed to be missional. They were all supposed to go to him and show the love of Christ and live self-sacrificially, not keep the old ancient Israel intact as a dead system. And right now, you have a lot of Israelis, a lot of Jews who actually also believe this, who believe that we should not be having nation as an or Israel as a nation, excuse me, especially the ultra Orthodox. For your viewers, I don't know if they have been YouTubing or seeing what's going on in Israel right now. Obviously, with the war in Gaza, it's chaotic, but the ultra Orthodox are saying they're on the side of the Palestinians. They're saying that what they're
Right.
doing is nationalistic, not ancient Judea. It's not right that they are supposed to welcome foreigners, and what they're doing is actually genocide, that it is war crimes. And the Israeli police and the Israeli military are attacking the ultra Orthodox. You see it in the streets. They're destroying their shops. They're beating them. It's atrocious what they're doing to them, what they're doing to their own people. But yes, it was this wonderful young man who taught me so much and who also changed my views. And from there, it just spiraled more and more. And the more that it came unraveled, I'm like, wait a minute. That means the more I studied, there is no rapture. There is no 7-year tribulation. That means a whole plethora of things started to unravel. And then all of a sudden, my views on women in ministry started to unravel.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, my views on whether or not we should even have pastors or everything. It's like things within the church that we held so high in regard. It's like, but this has only been around for maybe a few hundred years, and we think it's been around for the last 2,000.
Right.
And it's like, no, things change over time. We forget that. And
Okay, so what did this Palestinian Christian teach you? Like, give me some meat and bones here. You know?
so he very much taught me again about the love of Christ, but he also taught me how, okay, what we as the church are doing in giving blind support to Israel is idolatry. It ultimately is. The church is not to give blind support to another nation or to another people group. That's blind racism, ultimately, is what he taught me. That this is very wrong. We're choosing one ethnic group over another. We're pinning one group over another, and we're helping to kill one group over another. None of that is right. None of that is correct. I mean, for the American people listening, how would you feel if, let's say, you had Canada supporting all of the Native American and Latino population to persecute and have control over the African American population and the Caucasian population here? You'd be pinning one group against another, and a foreign entity is doing that. That's exactly what we're doing. I didn't realize how much our politics were influencing foreign nations until I talked to him. And then later on, traveling and meeting him in Palestine. And he took me through some of the checkpoints. He showed me some of the things that were really going on. And I realized, wow, the church is actually doing more harm to their mission, to the name of Christ, than I realized.
So what
So
did
he
you
helped.
see? What did you see in Palestine?
I saw people having to go through these checkpoints where you're herded through like cattle and you are mistreated. So I'd be going through one long line at a checkpoint, and then all of a sudden they would close that line. And then, you're putting all your luggage on a conveyor belt. Well, then they would push the conveyor belt back. They would press a button, and of course they're behind closed glass doors. They would press a button and everything on the conveyor belt would come flying off back at you, and you had to quickly grab it. So let's say you have your laptop, you have your luggage along with all these other people, and it's come flying off, and you've got to go to a different line. Well, then for fun, they closed that line and you got to go to a different line. It just kept going. And then they had to examine you, look at your documents, scan you. And it was like you're being treated very inhumanely. And, we're talking, old people, young people, you're talking people with disabilities, all these people trying to go through. And it's just not right. It's like there's a reason there's conflict. What I also saw was the amount of settlements, tons and tons of these settlements where they've built homes, and then of course giant walls around them, where thousands of people of Jewish descent have come from other nations and are now living in the West Bank. So they're essentially taking land and taking farmland from the Palestinians. And of course, they have all the weaponry from us. They have all the power from us. So if the Palestinians try to uprise and fight back, they go to jail or they get killed. And so more and more of your land is being taken. Your farmland's being taken. You're not able to make a living. It's going to create more conflict. And the church supports this. The church is saying, well, no, we need to support Israel no matter what. All this land belongs to the Israelis. Palestinians need to leave. They were never there. They're all immigrants who came in right when Israel became a nation in 1948. But yet there's evidence of the Palestinians living there and still having keys to their homes from prior to 1948. There's evidence of Muslims and Jews and Christians living together peacefully prior to 1948 in Israel. And yet now, thanks to the United States and the United Nations and everything we've done, we've helped create a great amount of conflict. And look at what it's resulted in. Look at the wars we've had in the Middle East. Look at the terrorist attacks and the fighting we've had in Europe and here in the United States. We have only done more harm than good. And I believe that the church actually needs to very much change their response to this. Because when I've tried to talk to the church about this and say, you do know that there are a lot of Palestinian Christians who are your brothers and sisters in Christ, who you will worship with in heaven, and their view is, well, they need to leave. It's like, really? Okay, well, in that case, how about you leave and give your land back to the Native Americans? Because if you truly believe that the ancient Israel was given to the Israelis, I'm sorry, but America only 200 years ago belonged to the Native Americans. So pack your stuff up and go back to Europe, go back to wherever. If you
Right.
want to take that viewpoint, it works both ways, both sides of the coin, right?
Mm.
Can't just say, have them pack up and leave. Well, you do the same. And you give the land back to the people that, Mother Earth, Father Sky, that gave that land to the Native Americans, and
Right.
let them have it back. That really changed my view. The more I talked with the church after my traveling through Israel and Palestine, and the church just kind of blew it off because of their eschatology, because of their views of Jesus coming back very soon, and this is what has
Yes.
to happen for Jesus to return and get them out of here. It's
Mhm.
like, you know what? Your views are royally screwed up, and I want nothing to do with those.
Mm.
So I'm going to support who I feel right in supporting. Doesn't mean I'm for mass genocide. I'm
Right.
not for,
Right.
I'm hear my heart for your listeners. I'm not for what the Hamas has done in abducting these children and abducting people.
Yes. Yes.
I am not for the slaughter, not at all. At the same time, I'm not for the retaliation of what Israel has done, and
Yes.
bombing and killing thousands of innocent people. Hatred begets hatred, evil begets evil. All we're doing is fueling this thing to continue on. There has to be a better way. There has to be.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're going to continue it. Is that what we want for our children, for our children's children, for the entire earth, to continue this blood cycle?
Mm.
And if the church would actually admit their fault and actually take a better stance as peacemakers that they're called to be,
Mm.
I believe that we could really make a difference in that land. I believe we really honestly could bring reconciliation.
So as I'm listening to you talk, I'm hearing a few things. First, I'm hearing a shift in your viewpoints. I'm hearing you've tossed out certain viewpoints. I'm hearing that you've had an experiential viewpoint impressed upon you by being in Israel and Palestine. Um, that you have had an informational viewpoint shift because you've been taught different things. You've begun to see some things from a different lens. But what I find difficult and what I can find hard, and not with your story, but with the amount of Christians that no matter what you're saying right now,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like a blindness goes over them. It's like their eyes become blind because, he who blesses Israel, he shall be blessed, right? That's what it
Yeah.
says in the scriptures. And that's what the church hones in on, right? Well, we're blessing Israel so we can be blessed. What, so you can live in your comfortable houses and drive your nice cars. Okay. But, someone's losing in the midst of this. The more that somebody's getting money and blessings and this and that, someone else is losing on the other side as well in this conflict. But it's that veiled eyes. So what would you share with people who really, they can't reason together? It says in the book of Isaiah, come, let us reason together, says the Lord. And there is absolutely no reasoning with this at all. Why is that? Is it because of their upbringing? Is it because of the way the news is spun? What is it that we can do to cause people to loosen the veil from the eyes? Because it's a thick veil.
That's a great question, Ellen. So that veil I've encountered many times, dialoguing with people, even large group chats with people, who hold my belief and people who don't. And a lot of them said it is ultimately because of salvation. They believe they need to first accept Christ, but then there's all these extra things they have to do, right? Just like what the Pharisees had ancient Israel do. One of these extra things is the blind support of Israel. And like you said, if you bless Israel, you will be blessed. They take that verse and they say, okay, I have to bless Israel, otherwise our nation is cursed. I have to bless Israel and give them support, otherwise my salvation's at stake. It's that extra, I guess you could call it fire insurance almost, which is really scary. But
Yes.
they believe in God, they follow God, they hold to the Bible, they go to church, they do the tithing, everything that we're taught to do in the church, right? Then that extra thing that if they don't do, they're scared, okay, I'm not doing what God wants. Well, then the judgment of God is going to befall me and my family. I have to do this. I have to support Israel because you'll hear pastors say it's a biblical mandate. You've got to do this. It's a biblical mandate. We are required to do it. And if you don't, well then, hey, you have no salvation. I've heard pastors say they don't know any Bible believing Christians who don't support Israel. And it's like, I know millions of Bible believing Christians who don't support Israel. There's tons of them all over. Right. And it's like, it's that narrow-minded view. The veil is not going to be removed out of fear. They are paralyzed by that fear of, if I don't do this, God's going to come down and smite me. God's going to curse me. God's going to do something to me. So it really makes me then wonder, what kind of God do you have? What kind of God? Is this Zeus with a lightning bolt? Is he right there ready just to smite you because you don't support one ethnic group over another? Wow. So
I'm right there. So now tell me a little bit about the news, because, okay, so they can have all this fear and all this stuff, but then that veil is reinforced. And I really believe that the veil is reinforced massively because of the news media. Now, we know that the news media can spin it all sorts of different ways. We know that they can take both sides of this conflict or both sides of any conflict and spin it for their own good and spin it with a variety of ways. But let's hone in right now, because we're on this topic of Gaza and the situation in Gaza. Where does the news play in this whole reinforcement of the blinding of people with Israel?
Unfortunately, and it depends on which news source you watch. I have tried to tune out all of them because I'm just fed up with all sides, because neither side is really trying to bring peace and reconciliation.
That's correct. Yep.
What I have seen from my own research is China is actually trying to do more than the church as far as peace and reconciliation, with negotiating a peace between Hamas and Israel. They are trying to be the forerunners of this, along with several other nations as well. But the news media, they have their perspective. They're only adding fuel to the fire. They're not truly helping. And you may get tidbits at times from the different news sources of, well, these atrocities are horrible, but that's it.
Yeah.
They'll say, okay, if let's say they're a conservative news source and they give the support to Israel and they're on the side of the church, they will disagree at times with the bombing of the refugee camps in Gaza. They'll disagree with the tons of children, women that have been slaughtered by the bombs dropping. They'll say, it's horrible, but they won't go on the side of saying it needs to stop. They'll maybe stop short of that at times, and they won't ask for action against that.
Right.
And of course, if you get the other side that gives all the side to the liberal side, the pro-Palestinian, the pro-Hamas side, of course, you're going to have that side saying, well, it's all Israel, and that we should not stop. We should keep firing rockets. We should keep attacking. We need to get all nations involved, and all Muslim nations need to come together and unite and come to Israel and stop this and fight. Where does either side get us? Because the news media isn't helping either way then.
Correct.
So you've got just more fuel added, more bloodshed.
Yes.
Who wins? No one wins.
Yeah.
It's just more death.
Yeah.
And it feels right now that this is an opportunity for the church to rise up and say, hey, we're going to take a neutral stance and be peaceful. We're not going to listen to either side of the news media.
Yes.
We're not going to listen to either side of Israel. We're not going to listen to the side of Hamas, but we are going to say, hey, you're both wrong. Stop this. Let's work towards peace.
Right. And that's where I'm going. Yeah, that's where I'm going next with this, is because the working towards peace. I mean, the amount of wars and war language and violence and all of these things that take place, I mean, there has to come a point when we have to say, this is unacceptable. We have to want this to change.
Yes.
We have to want this to stop.
Mhm.
And if we're, supporting these certain situations because there's oil there, or we're supporting,
Right.
that we know oil is all
I
on that
know.
ship, right? It's all right there. I mean, there's so much to be said as to why this thing is happening, why the conflicts are happening. But there has to come a point when we say enough. And I am thankful for the protests that are happening. I am thankful for the protests that just took place recently in London over the weekend, some of the different protests that have been happening. But where does peace begin? Does it like where does it begin? Where does peace begin?
I think it begins, to be honest with you, with seeing my humanity is tied up in your humanity. Your humanity is tied up in my humanity. Doesn't matter that we're oceans apart. Doesn't matter that we're different ethnic backgrounds. Doesn't matter we have different religious belief. The point is, innocent people are dying.
Yes,
So,
that's it.
so it's like, for the time being, hey, let's put aside our religious differences and the view that, hey, this all has to happen so that we can, get out of here, and escape the Antichrist. Let's put that aside and say, okay, this is genocide. This is horrible. It will continue to escalate and continue on no matter what
Yes,
if we don't stop this. And
correct.
to see these people, see them as
Right.
human beings, and help restore their dignity. That's what it takes. It doesn't take, a strong religious view to do that. It just
No.
takes looking in the mirror,
Yes.
looking in their eyes and saying, okay, this is wrong. And I believe we need to do that not just for Gaza, but for every single conflict,
Yes.
and say, hey, we've been on this earth for how long, and we live in an age where we can connect like this with technology instantly, and we can see human dignity in each other. We can connect with people all over the globe, and yet we still will kill each other at a moment's notice.
Sure.
It's like, when are we going to stop this? When are we going to truly connect to each other and take a stand for one another? When are we actually going to be there for each other and bring peace and reconciliation? I guarantee you, if some of this stuff were to start happening here in the United States, which, to be honest, I don't believe is that far off, that we would be working a lot harder towards peace. But once again, we've had it so good for so long here that we only worry about our world and what's going on here.
Yes.
And so we need to start actually looking globally and seeing what's going on out there and how we can be more active, how we can be less passive, and taking a better stance and doing what is right for the earth, doing what is right for humanity, for the innocent people in this
Do you
world.
have any suggestions on how to do that? Because I mean, I know these are like big, sweeping questions, but you spent time in the Middle East, you worked in the Middle East. And that teaches you a lot. You learn a lot when you leave your country and you go to another country and you see something and you live in it and you breathe it and you sit in the dirt with it and you sit in the high points and the low points with it. You've done that. So what do we do? What are some tips to create peace in our communities or create peace in a nation, even create peace in our families? I mean, I think a lot of things sometimes come right back, Jared, to how we feel about ourselves. If I'm not peaceful on the inside, then I'm not going to be peaceful with my neighbor. If I'm going to be in a conflict and warring within myself, I'm probably going to be in conflict and war with you as well. So I'm wondering if, when you talk a little bit about how we can solve some of this, that I think peace starts within us, one of us, one person at a time, personally. But why don't you share a bit?
Thank you. I would start off by saying, get uncomfortable.
Oh, what are you talking about, Jared? Get uncomfortable? Who are you kidding?
Get uncomfortable.
I am not interested in releasing my comfort. My right is comfort.
Yes, and now you have just spoken for the entire American church. And so,
No, go ahead.
so one of the things when I say get uncomfortable, I had to get used to not being comfortable when talking to my friends, be it the Quaker pacifist, be it the Palestinian, be it those that had different viewpoints, and help them to deconstruct a lot of the views I had. I had to get used to being uncomfortable and like being uncomfortable. Hence the reason I kept going back to them and asking more questions. And in that, building relationships with them and other people all over the globe, and realizing, okay, through these relationships, my heart changed. The American church, the American people need to get uncomfortable and build relationships with people in war-torn nations, with people in Gaza, with people in West Bank, Palestine. They need to build these healthy relationships where they say, okay, tell me your view, Ellen. Tell me what you go through on a daily basis. What is life like for you? You know, be raw, be honest, be open, and come with an open heart and recognize you may not have all the answers. You grew up in the United States. You grew up in, you know, Florida, Minnesota. You grew up wherever in a small town, and maybe you stay there your entire life. You don't know everything about the
Right.
world.
Right.
Go out and experience life. Go out and get uncomfortable. Go to different nations. Learn from them. See these people. You know, how many times you're a world traveler? Think of how many times for you and your viewers has our perspective changed just from going to a different country,
Oh my God.
trying a different food, for crying out loud, and your taste buds are like, oh my God, why have I never had this before? And then you meet different people who are amazing and loving, and you thought they were your enemy, and it's like, they're not my enemy. They may
Yes.
have a different view. They may have they may be, a different faith, but hey, we can smoke shisha and argila together, and we can kick back and have a good time, and I can learn from this person. They're
Yeah.
now my friend.
Yes.
And we need to get uncomfortable as Americans and as Christians and broaden our perspective, broaden our horizon. And we'll learn more about ourselves and learn more about other people. And in that, we're going to start to see other people in ourselves, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah.
We're
You'll
going to
see
see
the
their human
humanness.
dignity.
You'll
Thank you.
see the
Yes.
humanness. You'll see that, wow, you cry, I cry. Oh, you get angry, I get angry. And none of that has to do at all with religion or anything. I mean, there's so many human
Right.
traits. Just you and I sitting right here. You're born in India. You know, I was born in America. Yes, you were raised in America, but still you were born in India.
Mm-hmm.
If I really was a jerk, I would look at your skin color and I would be like, well, I don't want to have anything to do with you. But actually, as we're sitting here and we've gotten to know each other and we're having this conversation, we're having this dialogue, your color, my color, does not even come into play at all. All I'm
Right.
connecting with is your soul. I'm connecting with the very heart of who you are as a human being. I'm a human being, you're a human being, even playing field, enough said. And I think
Yes.
when we can see everybody on an even playing field, and this transcends, Jared, you know me, this goes as far as the church and the way that it handles the LGBTQ plus, how it handles
Mm-hmm.
Latinos, how it handles the African Americans, how it handles the Native Americans, how it handles marginalized groups in general. It needs to shift, and they do need to be
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And part of that uncomfortableness is not sitting in your pew every Sunday and sitting in your four walls every Sunday or throwing money at a cause, because that's really easy. People can throw money at a
Right.
cause. You know where I'm at on this whole thing,
Oh,
okay?
oh
And
yes.
some people, that's maybe what they can do or all they can do at that moment. So I'm not, ripping it down when people are doing that. But a lot of the church will just throw money at things, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not really sitting with the people. They're not really listening to the people. They're not sharing a cup of tea or a glass of wine or going out for a meal together. Instead, it's
Right.
an agenda. It's I got to do my bit with this person sitting in front of me. I got to tell them, about God. But why don't you just be
Yeah.
quiet and be God? Be the God you are, and love
Yep.
people. So I love what you're
Yes.
saying about getting uncomfortable, because right now, America with the LGBTQ plus, the church is really just on its high horse with this one. But if you
Yeah.
sat with the community and hung with the community and talked to the community, we would see that realness, that humanness, that
Hmm.
namaste. I see the divine in you and you see the divine in me. I mean, we would just see how much we're on an even playing field. So getting uncomfortable. What's
Absolutely.
something else, Jared?
Yes. So I think I already said it, but recognize you don't know everything. You don't
Oh,
have all the
what are you
answers. You
talking
you
about?
could be
I
wrong. You know, and that was a hard one for me because,
oh,
leaving a small town and going, to a Bible college, going to the military, I thought I had it all right. I had to, it was painful to realize I don't have all the right answers. I don't know everything. And the more I had to unpackage that, I had to actually humble myself. So
but
I guess
didn't
the
you
second,
learn everything from the Bible? Doesn't the Bible contain every single thing that you need to know about life?
I wish,
Okay.
I wish I gained a perspective. That's a great question, because what I gained was one perspective of the Bible from a small group of people. I love them, great, wonderful people. They helped raise me, but they had one perspective. The more I traveled, it's like there's different perspectives. There's
Wow.
different cultural perspectives because I was taught, the Scandinavian perspective. Well, when I went and traveled to the Middle East, I learned the Middle Eastern perspective of the Bible, and it came more to life.
Yeah.
But what else can we do, Ellen? You know, that's a hard one. It's because I try and speak from experience, and now I'm realizing, have I truly done enough myself? Maybe it's being more active. Maybe it's being more active and, saying, calling out the politicians, calling out leaders, calling out those in religious circles, in churches, mosques, wherever, and saying, hey, this is wrong. We need to change this. Calling them out in public and saying, your view is getting innocent people killed. Your view is leading to bloodshed. Is this what you want your name attached to? Is this what you want your legacy attached to? I
Hmm.
think we very much need to start doing that. And along those lines, also, stop fusing nationalism and faith. Okay, that's dangerous for any nation,
Yes.
be it
Yes.
where there's Christians here or Muslims in the Muslim world, or the nation of Israel, or any nation where you fuse nationalism and faith, because then it gives you a divine authority to do whatever you want to any other nation under the guise of your God, your deity, and your hands are wiped clean, right? This is what God wanted me to do. God wanted me to go, to this other country and kill people. God wanted me to go and attack these people. God wanted me to conquer this land. It's
Mhm.
all okay. Everything I did was in the name of God, so my hands are clean, my soul is clean. I'm still bound for paradise, right?
Mhm.
I think that's something that, as we become more connected with people, we've got to stop that. We have to separate those two. That's not easy. Trust me, it's not easy. But the more you do it, it's a very freeing thing. And you're able to see more of people's humanity apart from the nation they live in. I can now see a Muslim's humanity apart from the terrorists of 9/11. I
Yes.
can see, anybody's humanity apart from anything they do to me, or the hatred that has gone on.
Yes.
And so that's a big one. Start to separate those things and
Yeah.
just see a person. Just see people. Don't see their nation. Don't see their flag. Don't see their leaders. I mean, if every nation looked at us as uh, our leaders as our full representatives and saying, wow, you represent this, Ellen, because of your leaders. I mean, do you want that label? No, because
Oh,
that's not all you. We need to do the same to other people and
yes.
see them.
Yes. This is very good what you're sharing, because it reminds me of when I told you I was in Africa working, and I was in predominantly a Muslim, nation there within Africa. And because of people I knew who had gone to the war and different type of things, I had a very skewed view on the Muslim people. I had a very vengeful view. I was angry about what had happened to people I knew who were very dear in my heart, who were in the war suffering from PTSD. I was, dealing with all of these things. And I remember vividly, I'll never forget this, but I was on a bus and we were traveling through the bush. And there was a Jeep that was coming to the right, and they had men who were in the Jeep who had black turbans. And the nation I was in at that time, ISIS was nearby, and there were a lot of different things that were going on. And immediately I made a connection. Here came my reference point. I looked over and I went, black turbans, ISIS, we're going to die. The whole thing went through my line of thinking. I hate these people. It's all terrible. It's awful. And then it transferred to the people on the bus I was looking at. And then there were imams who were in the bus, who were sitting there just reading, the Quran and, doing what they were doing. And then there were other people. And then I began to develop this suspicious complex, because here's coming this Jeep, because I had watched the news, back in the States that said, these black turbans are all a sign of ISIS and all of these things.
Right, yes.
And so I was, I had all these reference points that were in front of me. And the humanity connection went out the window, because I was very much now wrapped into this narrative of, these are evil people, Muslims are terrible, we're all going to die, and I just went through this whole thing. Long story short, I heard this voice, and I don't know whether it was God or whether it was me. I would have said back then it was God, and it probably could have been the whole universe right there in that moment. But I remember it went right into my heart, and I heard these words, Ellen, I can do nothing within this nation to help its people understand love if you're not willing to love. I mean, it was so strong. And I just remember, thinking about it now, it's probably the universe. I don't think I could come up with something like that. But, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I remember the bus pulled over, and we had to, there were other people getting on. And of course the Jeeps were slowing down and people were getting off. And I remember these men entered the bus who had these black turbans, and I literally was having visceral responses inside. But I said, okay, in my head, I looked out the window and I said, I'm not going to look at them, because I was afraid. Because that was really the issue. I was more afraid than anything, afraid of what I didn't know, what I didn't understand. That's why we isolate, reject whole groups, is because I didn't understand. So I looked out the window, and down below were these little boys. They're the Gariboo boys. And we worked with the Gariboo boys, and they were the ones who were sold to Islamic teachers. And there's a lot to that whole story. And I looked at them and I saw their humanity. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing their humanity. And then I looked across, and there was a woman who was in a burqa, and I immediately saw her humanity, and I started seeing people's humanity. It was like I was able to see around the situation, even though on my left I was quite afraid of what was actually happening. So I just finally surrendered. I don't even know how it happened, but I just said, okay, I forgive. And I went through this whole list of what had happened to people I loved who were on, in the wars and different things like that they had incurred with. And I just began to forgive all the terrorists who had done that, the extremists. It was the extreme groups that were doing this. As that happened, love came into my heart in a way that I can't even begin to describe. I was very soft after that point. The black turbans didn't bother me. The imam sitting next to me didn't matter. The little Gariboo boys I was loving all the more, and the people I was loving all the more. And it was because I recognized that it was my own narrative and upbringing and reference points and all the thoughts and beliefs I had that were keeping me from a moment of truly loving and embracing. And that was probably one of the most powerful trips I had ever been on. We were there for several months, just working with the Muslims and different things. And what broke out after that, with healing and reconciliation and embrace and connection, to this day still is etched in my mind. But it came down to surrendering really my rights, if you want to call it that, surrendering my right to be vengeful, my right to be right as I saw it, and to really just stop, pause, reflect, and look at the situation as an overview versus these isolated incidences. And what I saw was incredible. It was beautiful. And so I'm a firm believer in uh, creating new narratives for oneself, surrendering, finding the peace in yourself, because I could only find the peace in me before I could have peace with my brethren over here. It wasn't going to happen unless I came to terms with the peace. And after that, I love Muslim people. I love them. I think they are some of the most integrous people, that I've met, and some of the most just so real, honest. They're wonderful humans.
Oh, they truly are. They have a beautiful, beautiful culture, beautiful people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So is there anything else, Jared, that you'd like to shed some light on at all? I know you spent time in the Middle East, and I know there's so much to your story that we could go on, but maybe you could share just a few things that, like I did with these experiences of having a different reference point by being overseas.
That's a great question, Ellen. I think a lot of, just talking about people's humanity with everything going on. There's so much chaos and conflict right now with, Russia and Ukraine, stuff going on in the Middle East, talks of, China and Taiwan going at it soon, and everything else that's going on in the world. It's in my travels, really seeing, like I said before, people as people, the dignity, the value, the worth. And I think I hate to say it, we can't be all things to all people, right? I can't give money to every single beggar. I can't house everybody. But can I have an open heart? Can I truly sit with someone and maybe get them a cup of coffee? Can I just sit and listen to them? Listen to their story? Can I just be present in that moment? I can't save the world. That's not my job.
That's right.
And I know there's so much for it. There's so much need. You've seen it as well in your travels. You've been through more nations than I have been. And you know that Ellen Manel can't do it all.
No.
Jared Larson can't do it all.
No.
But can we at least be present and make a person feel heard? Can we sit with someone and say, I'm sorry for what you're going through. I wish I could do more. And give them a hug and let them know that at least we didn't walk by them.
Yes.
At least we didn't, blow them off.
Yes.
We didn't walk by and say, okay, you're just a part of that wall that you're laying by or sitting by.
Yes.
We actually acknowledge their existence.
Absolutely.
And what does that take? 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
Yeah.
It costs nothing.
Yeah.
And a person can have the biggest smile, can have the biggest, just the tears that come down when they see, oh, this foreigner or this human being recognized me. Mm-hmm. They didn't walk by me like so many other people do. Mm-hmm. They actually sat with me. They actually embraced me. Maybe you can buy a cup of coffee or something for them. Maybe you can do something for them. I don't know. Yeah. But it starts with the little things. And that's, for me, in my travels, I had to realize that I can't always help everybody. But the little things, it's like throwing pebbles into a lake. The big stone that you can throw, that's where you can help rescue someone and get someone out of the situation they're in, right? But you can't do that for everybody, so you do the little pebbles. And the little pebbles turn into massive ripples. And if everybody can do that, regardless of a person's background and what you see with those blinders on, if we all can do that, what type of world can we live in, Ellen? What type of changes can we make just by sitting with someone, just by trying these little things, helping people out here and there? It takes nothing. Yeah, it really does. It's possible. There's, going back to the church, since that's where we started, mm-hmm. There are 2 billion people who according to Pew Research, identify as Christian. Well, if every single one of them were to come together and throw these little stones, and
Oh,
those stones get thrown again and again, how much more of a difference could we make? How much more of a difference could, the Buddhists make coming together? How much more could the Muslims coming together? If we put aside these political views, the religious views,
mhm.
and we all throw these little stones,
Yes.
I think we could make the world such more of a better place than it ever has been. Would it be a utopia? No, we're still going to have problems in this world, but it's going to be a better world than it is right now.
And that creates a loving world. There's the big message out there right now: choose love, choose love, choose love. But I'd like to know what the choosing love means, because a lot of times when I see the choose love message that seems to be going up right now, it's a big one. It's happening here. It seems to be happening everywhere. There's a lot of self stuff with that. There's, still the person says, I'm going to choose love. I'm going to love this person, love this person, love this person. But they're also stepping over the homeless guy, ignoring him like he's not there. They also pick and choose who they're going to have in relationships, whether or not they have, certain standards of living. I will then be in relationship with you, but you really don't have much to teach me, over here with this little person over here. And so there's a lot of this like love. We're still kind of juggling this whole love message right now. And I'm sure that
Right?
one day the balls will settle and the dust will settle and we'll have it all figured out. I don't know if it'll happen while I'm still here, but I know that choosing love goes beyond your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are staying in the comfort zone, you're not choosing love. You're just not. I mean, you and I have worked. We worked overseas together and we worked in some real interesting scenarios and situations with humanitarian stuff. And it was crazy. The stuff we saw, the levels of poverty we saw, the levels of degradation and abuse and violence and all of these things. And my choosing love, if I was going to choose love in that moment, it wasn't I'm choosing love, but I'm going to only go over here to the people that are easy for me to deal with. Like, that's not choosing love. Love is an embracing of all people. Now, I don't mean like, where you let people walk on you and all of that. I think, for my viewers, they'll understand where I'm going with this. But choosing love is a high road and a high calling, but it is not a segregated calling. It's not where you segregate yourself from someone else. That's not choosing love. That
No.
So
it's really,
anyway,
yeah, it's really going to, how do I say this? It's loving those that, once again, rub you the wrong way.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely. And not loving from a distance. Anybody can love from a distance. Oh, I love my neighbor 4 doors down. They drive me nuts, but I love them. Do you ever interact with them? Well, no, I never interact with them.
No.
Well, then of course you're going to think it's all love, 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 because you're not having any conflict. There's
right,
not,
yes.
there's not any need to humble yourself.
Yep. Well, you asked me a very good question earlier, Ellen. What is pacifism? It's activism. So that loving is activism. You have to actively engage people. It's not sitting by and doing nothing and still living your own life and saying, I love them, but I'm not going to interact with them.
Correct.
No. You love them by interacting with those that you disagree with. If I disagree with the people in Hamas, if I disagree with Palestinians, I need to interact with them, learn to love them. If I disagree with Israelis and what is going on right now, I need to interact with them and love them and see their humanity as well in the midst of all this. It goes across all lines, regardless of your views, and that's all views. Learn to love and like I said, get uncomfortable. Be happy in getting uncomfortable, because the world is getting smaller and smaller. You're going to have to get uncomfortable. And if we want to have a positive impact in this world, we have to do that. We have to become active. And that's why I'm thankful for you with this podcast, because you're able to be active. And through technology, you're able to reach people all over and have a positive influence. So you're not just throwing one stone, Ellen, you're throwing like 5 stones into
I don't know.
into a river at one time each time. But yes, so this is one way, as an example, you are active. But for other people who are not tech savvy like me, my activism may be something totally different. We also need to get in that mindset. What is activism? Well, be creative. What is something you're good at? I'm better at, interacting and like, how can I help you? How can I serve you? What
Right.
do you need? I'll listen to you. I may not always agree, but I'll listen to you. That's my activism. It's not with technology. Other people who are listening to this podcast, search deep. What is your activism? What is it makes you come alive? What are you gifted at that you can do for others?
Yes.
And sit in that uncomfortability with other people,
Yes.
using your gift.
Yes.
And remember, it's going to come back to you. That's the other thing people need to know. It's not just you're giving. Yes, you're constantly giving, but it's going to come back to you as well. People are going to reciprocate it back to you. The ripple effects will come back and hit you as well.
Yeah.
And so your humanity, your dignity is also going to be continually restored and uplifted through others as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Jared, this has been amazing. Thank you for just connecting like this and just sharing some of your insights and sharing your kind and compassionate heart, because I've always seen that with you, that kind and compassionate heart. And I saw it with some of the toughest people, and I saw it with people that maybe weren't so tough. You always maintained a kind and compassionate nature with them. And I want to say thank you for just giving us some tips and tools on what maybe we can do, that it starts with us, starts with the little, get comfortable at being uncomfortable, have the conversations, don't ignore the conversations, don't run, and allow yourself for transformation, because you really are truly transforming yourself. And that is the one piece that I've noticed with you through this whole entire podcast, and just what you've been sharing is just a journey of transformation and a willingness to journey into transformation. So I want to say thank you, Jared, for being here today.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for having me. This was a joy and a delight. I'm very glad this took place.
Sure thing. All right.